You know that moment when you walk into your own house and suddenly feel like a stranger? That's exactly what happened when I came home early from work and heard my wife giggling with her friends about planning my rehabilitation. Yes, you heard that right. My own wife was sitting in my living room, plotting to fix me like I was some broken appliance. I had left the office around 3 that Tuesday afternoon. A client meeting got canceled, and instead of staying to catch up on paperwork, I decided to surprise my wife with an early dinner together. The front door was unlocked, which wasn't unusual, but as I stepped inside, voices drifted from the living room. I recognized my wife's laugh immediately, along with her usual crew of friends. The thing is, my wife was saying, he still thinks his opinion matters more than mine in conversations. Like, yesterday he actually interrupted me when I was explaining to the neighbor why we need to repaint the fence. A chorus of knowing uhs and oh honeys followed. That's classic mansplaining. Came another voice. You need to call him out every single time. Make him aware of his privilege. I froze in the hallway. Were they seriously having a therapy session about me? I've been reading this book about toxic masculinity, my wife continued. It has a whole chapter on rehabilitation techniques for husbands who display dominant behaviors. Rehabilitation. The word hit me like a slap. I pressed myself against the wall, listening as these women discussed me like I was a problem to be solved. Oh, I know that book, one of her friends chimed in. My cousin used those methods on her husband. Now he asks permission before making any decisions and actually listens when women talk. They all laughed. The sound made my stomach turn. The key is consistency, another voice added. You have to challenge every little thing. When he sits with his legs spread, comment on it. When he raises his voice even slightly, call it aggression. Make him second-guess everything. And don't forget the public corrections, came yet another suggestion. Embarrass him a little in front of other people. It speeds up the process. My hands slowly clenched into fists. These women weren't just gossiping. They were strategizing, planning a systematic campaign to break me down and rebuild me according to their specifications. The best part, my wife said, and I could hear the smirk in her voice, is that he'll think it's his idea to change. He'll believe he's becoming a better person. More laughter, more agreement, more detailed discussion of how to manipulate and gaslight me into submission. I stood there for another 10 minutes, listening as they mapped out their approach. They had timelines. They had backup plans. They even discussed how to handle resistance from me. It was like listening to a board meeting where I was the project to be managed. When one of them mentioned bringing in her therapist friend to do an intervention, if I didn't respond quickly enough, I'd heard enough. I quietly backed toward the front door, stepped outside, and took a long, deep breath. The anger was there, burning in my chest, but something else was rising alongside it. Something colder, more calculating. I got in my car and drove around the block twice, giving myself time to think. By the time I parked back in my driveway, I had made a decision. If my wife and her friends wanted to play games, I would play too. But they had made one crucial mistake in their planning. They had underestimated who they were dealing with. I walked back into my house through the front door, making sure to close it loudly enough for them to hear. The living room went suspiciously quiet. Honey, my wife called out. You're home early. I walked into the living room where 4 women sat with books and notebooks scattered across my coffee table. They looked like they'd been caught planning a surprise party, which in a twisted way, I suppose they had been. Yeah, meeting got canceled, I said, scanning the faces around the room. What's all this? Book club, just some light reading, my wife said quickly, sweeping a book under a magazine. Girl talk, you know how it is. I nodded slowly, letting my eyes linger on each woman for just a moment longer than was comfortable. Girl talk, right. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. They all knew I'd heard something, but they couldn't be sure how much. Well, one of her friends said, standing abruptly, I should probably head home. Early morning tomorrow. The others followed suit, suddenly remembering urgent appointments and responsibilities. Within 5 minutes, they had all cleared out, leaving behind a pile of hastily gathered books and an atmosphere of barely contained panic. My wife stood in the doorway, watching her friends' cars disappear down the street. When she turned back to me, I was sitting in my chair, calmly flipping through one of the books they'd left behind. Transforming Toxic Masculinity, I read aloud from the cover. Interesting choice for light reading. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out damage control. Honey, I can explain. I'm sure you can, I interrupted, setting the book down and looking directly at her. But you know what? I'm curious to see where this goes. The confusion on her face was almost amusing. She had expected anger, defensiveness, maybe even an argument. What she got instead was a man who looked completely unruffled by her little conspiracy. "What do you mean?" she asked carefully. I stood up and walked toward the kitchen. "I mean, if you think I need rehabilitation, then by all means, let's see what you've got. Should be educational for both of us." I left her standing there, processing what I'd just said, while I went to start dinner. She didn't know it yet, but her little game had just taken an unexpected turn. And unlike her carefully planned strategies, I was about to start playing by my own rules. The next morning started exactly how I expected it would. My wife had clearly spent the night strategizing because she came downstairs with a new energy about her. Over coffee, she began her first official attempt at my rehabilitation. "You know," she said, stirring her coffee with deliberate slowness, "I've been thinking about our conversation patterns. You have a tendency to dominate discussions." I looked up from my newspaper. "Do I now?" "Yes. Like right now, you're reading while I'm trying to talk to you. That's dismissive behavior." I folded the paper neatly and set it aside. "You have my full attention. Please, continue with your analysis of my conversation patterns." She blinked, clearly thrown by my compliance. The book had probably told her to expect resistance. "Well, I just think we should establish some ground rules for healthy communication. Such as, you should ask before changing the television channel when we're both watching." I nodded thoughtfully. "And should you ask before planning my personality reconstruction with your friends?" Her coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. "That's not what we were doing." "Of course not. My mistake. What other ground rules did you have in mind?" She recovered quickly, pulling out her phone and consulting what looked like a list. "I think you should be more aware of your physical presence. The way you sit, take up space, that sort of thing." "Ah yes, the manspreading crisis. How thoughtless of me. Don't be sarcastic. This is serious." "Oh, I'm taking this very seriously. In fact, I'm fascinated by the scientific approach you're taking. Tell me, how exactly did you measure my leg positioning to determine it was problematic?" She stared at me, realizing that her scripted talking points weren't quite holding up under actual scrutiny. That evening, she brought reinforcements. Two of her friends from yesterday's planning session showed up for dinner, armed with what they clearly thought was solidarity and moral support. "We were just discussing gender dynamics in relationships," one of them announced during the main course, as if this was normal dinner conversation. "How enlightening," I replied, cutting my steak. "What conclusions have you reached?" "Well, men often don't realize how much space they take up, literally and figuratively," the other friend chimed in. "It's unconscious privilege." I chewed thoughtfully. "You know, you're absolutely right. Here I am, unconsciously taking up space at the head of my own table, in my own home, eating food I paid for. How thoughtless of me." The silence that followed was deafening. "That's not what she meant," my wife said quickly. "No? Then please, explain what she did mean. I'm genuinely curious about this space allocation theory." The friend who had made the original comment looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. My wife shot her a look that clearly said, "Stick to the plan." "The point is awareness," my wife said, regaining her composure. "Being mindful of how your behavior affects others." "Absolutely. For instance, I'm now acutely aware of how planning someone's personality rehabilitation behind their back might affect them." Very mindful stuff. Both friends suddenly found their plates extremely interesting. "Can I ask you something?" I continued, addressing the friends directly. "Do your husbands know about this little project?" "What project?" one of them asked weakly. "The rehabilitation program. You know, the one where you systematically break down masculine behaviors through public embarrassment and psychological manipulation. That project." The second friend stood up abruptly. "I just remembered I have an early meeting tomorrow." "Of course you do. And I suppose you." I looked at the first friend. "Have a sudden urgent appointment as well." She nodded frantically, already reaching for her purse. Within minutes, they were gone again, leaving my wife and me alone with the dinner dishes and the elephant in the room. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," she said, finally. "Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, I'm being remarkably cooperative. I listen to your concerns, I'm aware of my space allocation, and I'm even engaging in dialogue about gender dynamics. Isn't that exactly what the book recommended?" She didn't have an answer for that. Over the next few days, The attempts became more frequent and more desperate. She tried correcting my aggressive tone when I asked where she'd put my keys. She made pointed comments about my interrupting when I answered questions she'd asked me. She even brought up my privilege when I held the door open for her. But with each attempt, I responded with the same calm curiosity, asking for clarification, requesting evidence, and pointing out the logical inconsistencies in her arguments. It was like watching someone try to build a house of cards in a windstorm. The breaking point came on Friday evening. She had clearly spent the day preparing for another session because she came home with printed articles and highlighted passages. "I want to discuss emotional labor," she announced, spreading papers across the kitchen counter. "Excellent topic. Let's start with the emotional labor involved in secretly plotting against your spouse. That must be exhausting. Stop turning everything around. This is about you taking responsibility for your behavior." "Which behavior specifically?" "Because I've been taking careful notes, and so far the list includes sitting with my legs apart, speaking in my normal voice, opening doors, reading the newspaper, and asking where my keys are. Should I add anything else?" She stared at the papers in front of her, then at me, then back at the papers. I could see the exact moment she realized that her rehabilitation program had backfired spectacularly. "You're not taking this seriously," she said quietly. "On the contrary, I'm taking it very seriously. So seriously, in fact, that I've been documenting the entire process. Would you like to see my notes?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the voice recordings I'd been making. Her face went white. "You've been recording our conversations?" "Only the ones where you attempt to gaslight me. You know, for educational purposes. I figure if I'm going to be rehabilitated, I should keep track of the techniques being used. Very scientific approach, don't you think?" She sank into a chair, the fight going out of her completely. "What do you want?" she asked. "What I want," I said, sitting across from her, "is for you to understand something very clearly. I am not a project to be managed. I am not broken merchandise to be returned and exchanged. And I am certainly not going to be manipulated by amateur psychology and peer pressure." I leaned forward, making sure she was looking directly at me. "If you have legitimate concerns about our relationship, we can discuss them like adults. But if you ever try to rehabilitate me again, or bring your friends into our marriage to gang up on me, there will be consequences. Do we understand each other?" She nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "Good. Now, let's have a real conversation about what's actually bothering you. And this time, leave the books and the friends out of it." I thought my little demonstration with the recordings might have ended this whole charade, but I severely underestimated how committed these women were to their cause. If anything, my resistance only convinced them they were dealing with a more serious case than they'd initially thought. The escalation started the following Monday when I came home to find a woman I'd never met sitting in my living room with my wife and her usual accomplices. She was older, maybe mid-50s, wearing the kind of professional outfit that screamed, "I have degrees, and I'm here to help you." "Honey," my wife said with forced brightness, "this is Dr. Patricia Williams. She specializes in masculine behavioral patterns." I set down my briefcase and looked at this supposed expert who was sitting in my chair, clipboard in hand, studying me like I was a lab specimen. "Let me guess," I said. "You're here for the intervention." Dr. Williams smiled the practiced smile of someone accustomed to dealing with difficult patients. "I prefer to think of it as a consultation. Your wife has shared some concerns about communication patterns in your relationship. Has she now? And what's your professional assessment based on these secondhand reports?" "Well, resistance to constructive feedback is often a symptom of deeper issues with authority and control." I almost laughed. "Authority? In my own home?" "The home is a shared space," one of the friends interjected. "Marriage is a partnership." "Thank you for that groundbreaking insight," I replied. "Dr. Williams, I'm curious about your credentials. Where did you get your degree in husband rehabilitation?" The professional smile flickered slightly. "I have a master's degree in social work with a focus on family dynamics." "Social work. Fascinating. And how many marriages have you personally maintained successfully using these techniques?" "That's not really relevant." "Oh, but it is. See, you're sitting in my house, analyzing my behavior based on complaints from my wife and her friends, and recommending changes to my personality. I'd say your track record is extremely relevant." My wife jumped in. "She's here to help us communicate better." "No," I corrected. "She's here because your little book club approach failed. So you decided to bring in what you think is professional reinforcement. Tell me, Dr. Williams, did my wife mention that she's been secretly recording our conversations to analyze my toxic behaviors? The expert's eyebrows shot up. Recording conversations? Oh yes. And documenting my sitting positions. And timing my responses to see if I interrupt too quickly. Very scientific. I'm sure you're impressed by her methodology. The room went silent. Even the friends looked uncomfortable now. Perhaps we should focus on constructive dialogue, Dr. Williams suggested, clearly trying to regain control of the situation. Absolutely. Let's start with this. Doctor, in your professional opinion, is it healthy for a spouse to conspire with friends to psychologically manipulate their partner? That's not what we're doing, my wife protested. Really? Because I have recordings that suggest otherwise. Would you like to hear them, Dr. Williams? I think you'd find the strategic planning fascinating. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through the files. Here's a good one from last Tuesday. The key is to make him doubt his instincts. Every time he expresses confidence, we need to challenge it. Very therapeutic, don't you think? Dr. Williams looked genuinely shocked. The friends were studying their shoes like they contained the secrets of the universe. Or this gem from Thursday. If he gets defensive, that just proves we're right about his aggressive tendencies. Brilliant logic there. Those conversations were taken out of context, my wife said desperately. Were they? Dr. Williams, in your professional experience, is there a healthy context for planning someone's psychological manipulation? The expert was clearly struggling. This wasn't going according to anyone's script. Maybe we should reschedule, one of the friends suggested weakly. Oh no, I said, settling into the couch across from them. I'm finding this very educational. Dr. Williams, please continue with your assessment. Based on what you've heard today, who do you think has the unhealthy behavioral patterns in this relationship? She opened her mouth, then closed it. Professional ethics were clearly warring with the fee she was probably getting paid for this house call. The situation seems more complex than initially presented, she said carefully. More complex. That's one way to put it. I turned to my wife. Would you like to tell Dr. Williams about the books you've been studying? The ones with techniques for breaking down masculine resistance? My wife's face went red. You're embarrassing me. Am I? Because I thought we were having a healthy dialogue about communication patterns. Isn't that why Dr. Williams is here? I stood up and walked to the bookshelf, pulling out the stack of books they'd left behind during their first planning session. Let's see what we have here. Taming the Alpha Male. From Dominant to Domesticated. Breaking the Masculine Code. Quite a library you've assembled. I flipped open one of the books to a highlighted passage and read aloud. Sustained psychological pressure combined with social isolation will force even the most resistant subjects to modify their behavior patterns. Dr. Williams actually flinched. That's not standard therapeutic practice. No kidding, but it is what my wife and her friends have been implementing for the past 2 weeks. Very dedicated students, I must say. The silence stretched on until it became unbearable for everyone except me. Here's what's going to happen, I announced, closing the book. Dr. Williams, you're going to leave now and never come back. You can keep whatever fee you've been paid, but consider it compensation for a lesson in professional ethics. She was already gathering her papers. As for you three, I looked at each of the friends in turn. Your little psychology experiment is over. You're no longer welcome in my home for your planning sessions. If you want to rehabilitate someone, start with your own husbands and see how that works out for you. They couldn't get out fast enough. Within 5 minutes, I was alone with my wife, who looked like she'd been hit by a truck. You humiliated me, she said quietly. No, I replied. You humiliated yourself. You brought strangers into our marriage to gang up on me. You studied manipulation techniques like it was homework, and you treated me like a problem to be solved instead of a person to be respected. I just wanted you to be better. Better according to who? Your friends? Some random books? A social worker with questionable ethics? I sat down across from her. Here's the thing you don't seem to understand. I don't need to be fixed because I'm not broken. And I certainly don't need to be rehabilitated by people who think deception and manipulation are therapeutic tools. She was crying now, but I wasn't feeling particularly sympathetic. What happens now? She asked. Now you decide whether you want to be married to me as I am, or whether you want to keep trying to turn me into some idealized version that exists only in your self-help books. But understand this clearly. There will be no more interventions, no more expert consultations, and definitely no more secret planning sessions with your friends. I stood up and headed toward the kitchen. When you've made your decision, let me know. Until then, I suggest you think very carefully about what kind of marriage you actually want. 2 weeks of relative peace followed the Dr. Williams incident. My wife was quieter, more cautious, but I could sense the wheels turning. She wasn't planning to give up. She was planning to go bigger. The first hint came when she started mentioning how worried her mother was about our marriage. Then it was her sister expressing concern. Suddenly, every family member had opinions about my behavior that needed addressing. My brother thinks you've been really aggressive lately, she mentioned over breakfast one Thursday. Your brother, who hasn't spoken to me in 6 months, suddenly has insights about my personality? Interesting. She didn't respond, but I caught her texting frantically under the table. Friday evening, she made her move. I'd like to have a family dinner this weekend. Just close relatives and a few friends. To clear the air. Clear what air exactly? There are some concerns that need to be addressed openly, in a safe, supportive environment. I almost admired the audacity. She was planning a full-scale intervention disguised as a family gathering. How many people are we talking about? Maybe 8 or 10. Nothing overwhelming. Right. 8 or 10 people gathered specifically to tell me how problematic I was. What could possibly be overwhelming about that? Sounds delightful. Should I prepare remarks? Or will you be providing talking points for everyone? Why do you always assume the worst? Experience. That evening, while she was in the shower, I checked her phone. The group chat was illuminating. They had assigned roles. Her mother would address my disrespectful tone. Her sister would discuss my controlling tendencies. The friends would provide backup with specific examples of problematic behavior. They even had a timeline. Dinner, then coffee, then this serious conversation that would last until I either agreed to couples therapy with a counselor of their choosing or faced social consequences. I took screenshots of everything. Saturday morning, I made some calls of my own. My brother-in-law who'd witnessed my wife's friends' planning sessions. My neighbor who'd heard them discussing my case over the fence. Even Dr. Williams, who was apparently having second thoughts about her involvement. You want them all here tomorrow? My brother-in-law asked. 7 o'clock sharp. Parked down the street. Sunday arrived with my wife in full hostess mode, cooking for hours and arranging furniture to create what she probably thought was a therapeutic circle. I helped carry dishes and smiled pleasantly while watching her stage manage my own intervention. The guests arrived right on schedule. Her parents, her sister and brother-in-law, 3 of the original friend conspirators, and surprisingly, Dr. Williams again. I thought we might benefit from professional guidance. My wife explained when she saw my raised eyebrow. We made it through dinner with superficial conversation before my wife cleared her throat meaningfully. Actually, we asked everyone here because we care about our family and want to address some ongoing issues. Here it comes. Several people have noticed concerning patterns in behavior that we think need professional attention. Her mother nodded gravely. We're all worried about the aggressive communication style. Her sister chimed in, and the dismissive attitude toward feedback. Dr. Williams opened her notebook. I think structured dialogue would be beneficial. I let them continue for exactly 5 minutes, listening as they took turns describing my various failures as a husband and human being. When they finished, the room fell silent, waiting for my defensive response. Instead, I pulled out my phone. Before I respond, I'd like everyone to hear something. I played the recording from the original planning session, letting my wife's voice fill the room as she described techniques for breaking down masculine resistance. The expressions around the table shifted from confident intervention to dawning horror. That's just one of several recordings, I said calmly. Would you like to hear the one where Dr. Williams agreed to participate in psychological manipulation for money? Dr. Williams stood up abruptly. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Sit down, doctor. You haven't heard the best part yet. The doorbell rang. Perfect timing. Excuse me, I believe we have more guests. I opened the door to let in my brother-in-law, my neighbor, and 2 other witnesses to my wife's conspiracy. They filed in quietly and found seats. Everyone, I'd like you to meet some additional family friends. They have some interesting observations to share about intervention planning and marriage manipulation. My wife's face went completely white. Her co-conspirators looked like they wanted to disappear. Now then, I said, retaking my seat. Let's have that structured dialogue you wanted. The living room had never been quieter. My wife stared at her hands while her intervention team realized they'd walked into a trap of their own making. Since we're all here for honest communication, I began. Let's start with my neighbor here. Tell everyone what you heard over the fence last Tuesday. My neighbor, clearly uncomfortable but determined, spoke up. I heard the ladies discussing how to make him feel insecure about his decisions. They were laughing about it. My wife's mother looked confused. What do you mean? Mom, my brother-in-law said quietly. Maybe you should hear what they actually planned before supporting it. I played another recording. This time it was my wife explaining to her friends how they needed to coordinate stories to make me seem unreasonable to family members. Her father's face hardened. You manipulated us into coming here under false pretenses? It wasn't manipulation, my wife said desperately. I genuinely thought. You thought you could orchestrate my humiliation using my own family. I interrupted. Dr. Williams, would you like to explain to everyone why you agreed to participate in this? The doctor was already gathering her things. I was given incomplete information about the situation. Were you? Because I have text messages between you and my wife discussing payment for extended counseling sessions once you declared me mentally unstable. Dr. Williams froze. My wife's sister looked horrified. You were planning to have him declared mentally unstable? She asked. That's taken out of context. My wife stammered. I scrolled through my phone. Here's the context. If we can get Dr. Williams to document his defensive responses, we can push for mandatory therapy and maybe even temporary separation if he refuses treatment. The silence was deafening. Her own mother was staring at her like she'd never seen her before. Did you really think this through? Her father asked quietly. You plan to destroy your husband's reputation and potentially his job over your personal grievances? I just wanted him to be better. Better, I repeated. By lying to professionals, manipulating family members, and conspiring to damage my mental health record. My brother-in-law shook his head. This is insane. You called us here claiming he was being abusive, but you're the one who's been orchestrating psychological abuse for weeks. One of her friends finally spoke up. We should go. This isn't what we signed up for. Really? I asked. Because you seemed pretty enthusiastic about public humiliation when you thought it was going in the other direction. I stood up and addressed the room. Since we're all family here, let me make something clear. This marriage will continue on my terms, or it won't continue at all. There will be no more interventions, no more conspiracy meetings, and definitely no more attempts to manipulate our family members. I looked directly at my wife. You have a choice to make. You can apologize to everyone you lied to, starting with your parents, and we can try to rebuild some trust. Or you can keep playing games and find yourself explaining to a divorce lawyer why you thought psychological manipulation was appropriate marriage therapy. Her friends were already heading for the door. Dr. Williams slipped out behind them without another word. I'm sorry, Dad, my wife said quietly to her father. I thought I was doing the right thing. The right thing would have been honest communication with your husband, he replied. Not this elaborate scheme. Her mother looked between us. What do you need from us? Nothing, I said. Just treat us like adults who can handle our own marriage problems. After everyone left, my wife and I sat in the wreckage of her grand plan. I really thought I was helping, she said, by lying and manipulating people who care about us. I was scared you'd never change. Change into what exactly? Someone who asks permission to have opinions? Someone who apologizes for taking up space in his own home? She didn't answer. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to call your parents tomorrow and apologize for lying to them. You're going to explain that you manipulated them into taking sides in our marriage based on false information. She nodded. And then we're going to have real conversations about actual problems, not manufactured issues from self-help books. What if I can't do that? Then you'll be having conversations with a divorce attorney instead. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Do you still love me? I love the woman I married. Whether that's still who you are remains to be seen. 3 months later, I can honestly say that dismantling my wife's rehabilitation project was the best thing that ever happened to our marriage. The immediate aftermath wasn't pretty. My wife spent 2 weeks alternating between tears and anger, trying to process the fact that her grand plan had not only failed, but had backfired spectacularly. Her friends stopped calling. Her mother gave her a lecture about honesty that lasted 3 hours. Dr. Williams sent a formal apology letter along with a refund check. But somewhere in that wreckage, something interesting happened. Once all the manipulation tactics and psychological games were stripped away, we actually started talking to each other. I felt like I was losing myself, she admitted during one of our real conversations. Like I was becoming this person I didn't recognize, and I blamed you for it. So instead of talking to me about feeling lost, you decided to remake me instead? When you put it like that, it sounds insane. It was insane. The real breakthrough came when she finally understood what her behavior had actually accomplished. Instead of creating a more submissive husband, she'd revealed exactly how strong and resourceful I could be when pushed. Instead of breaking my confidence, she'd forced me to develop an unshakable sense of my own worth. You know what's funny? I told her one evening as we cleaned up after dinner, "Your rehabilitation project actually worked, just not the way you intended." "What do you mean?" "You wanted me to be more aware of my behavior, more intentional about my choices, more confident in setting boundaries." Mission accomplished. She laughed despite herself. "I created a monster." "No, you revealed the man you actually married. The one who doesn't back down when he's right, doesn't apologize for existing, and won't be manipulated by anyone, including his wife." The changes in our relationship were immediate and dramatic. Conversations that used to involve subtle manipulation tactics became direct and honest. Disagreements that would have turned into psychological warfare became actual problem-solving sessions. When she started to slip back into old patterns, a simple reminder was enough. "Are we having a real conversation, or are you trying to rehabilitate me again?" She'd catch herself immediately. Her relationship with her friends underwent a complete transformation as well. The ones who'd been enthusiastic about the manipulation project quietly disappeared from her life. The few who remained were the ones who'd been uncomfortable with the whole thing from the beginning. "I can't believe I let them convince me that was normal," she said one day after declining yet another invitation to a girls' night that would probably involve husband bashing. "You wanted support, and they gave you what felt like a solution. The problem was the solution was toxic." The most satisfying part came 6 months later when we ran into Dr. Williams at a restaurant. She actually tried to avoid eye contact, but I walked right up to her table. "Doctor, how's the marriage counseling business?" She looked mortified. "I'm actually focusing on individual therapy now." Wise career move. Turns out trying to psychologically manipulate people's spouses isn't sustainable as a business model. My wife squeezed my arm, half embarrassed and half proud. "I hope you've learned something from our experience," I continued. "Next time someone asks you to help gaslight their spouse, maybe suggest actual communication instead." We walked away, leaving her sitting there with her mouth open. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when my wife's sister called to apologize. "I should have asked more questions instead of just taking her word for everything," she said. "The way you handled that whole situation was impressive, honestly. I just refused to be treated like a problem to be solved." Yeah, well, it worked. She's actually happier now than she's been in years. And that was true. Once my wife stopped trying to change me and started appreciating who I actually was, our entire dynamic improved. She rediscovered the confidence and independence that had attracted me to her in the first place. "You know what I realized?" she told me recently. "I was trying to fix you because I thought that was easier than fixing myself. And now I know that the man I married doesn't need fixing. He just needed a wife who respected him enough to be honest about what she wanted instead of trying to manipulate him into becoming it. We still have disagreements. We still challenge each other. But now it happens in the open, with mutual respect, instead of through psychological warfare disguised as self-improvement. The rehabilitation project is long dead, but the marriage that survived it is stronger than ever." Sometimes the best way to fix something is to stop trying to fix it and start appreciating what you already have. Turns out, I didn't need rehabilitation after all. I just needed a wife who understood that the man she married was exactly the man she needed, flaws and all.